Denmark just picked Europe's answer to Patriot for its national air defense. The system it chose? Well, Ukraine already operates it inside its high-end air defense network. Though Kyiv rarely identifies which system kills which incoming missile, it's the SAMP-TNG. That's right, the Danes are hopping aboard this SAMP-T train, baby.
Choo-choo! Choo-choo! Ha-ha!
And the newer variant, the one Denmark just ordered, well, Ukraine may begin testing under live combat conditions before Denmark even takes delivery. So, Europe's most consequential air defense procurement story isn't playing out at a defense expo in Paris, it's playing out over Ukrainian cities right now. Denmark selected the SAMP-TNG air defense system over the Patriot. France and Italy already ordered it. Italy took delivery of its first system in January 2026. That's a moderately interesting European defense story, but here's the part that reframes everything. By the time Denmark gets its first system in 2028, Ukrainian crews may have already learned what works, what breaks, and what Russia does when it decides to find the seams. Denmark is buying the shield, Ukraine is proving whether the shield holds. That is the story of how Europe is trying to build an air defense architecture before Moscow decides to make the question more than theoretical. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran of the US Army and the US Air Force, law grad, and I may end up fighting for the Royal Danish Army if Trump tries to invade Greenland. Just saying. Air defense is, professionally speaking, my native language, and I can tell you that Europe's current air defense situation has got the same energy as a house with a half-finished roof in a town where the forecast just changed. Let's talk about what Denmark just decided, what Ukraine is already doing with the same system, and why the connection between those two facts is the most important thing happening in European defense right now. So what is the SAMP-TNG? Well, let's start with its name because it sounds like a bureaucratic accident and it deserves a proper introduction. SAMP-T stands for Soleil Marine Portée Terrestrielle, French for ground-based medium to long-range air defense. The NG means next generation. It is built by EUROSAM, a joint venture between MBDA and Thales, and it's the most capable indigenous European surface-to-air missile system currently in production. Denmark's variant will pair with the Groundfire 300 radar, an S-band ASA antenna that rotates to provide 360-degree coverage with detection ranges Thales claims can reach 400 kilometers. It's container-sized and reportedly deployable in under 15 minutes. For scale, Patriot's AN MPQ-65 radar is excellent, but it requires considerably more setup time and significantly larger logistics footprints. The Interceptor is the Aster 30 Block 1 new technology designed to engage aircraft, cruise missiles, medium-range ballistic missiles, and hypersonic threats. The Aster missile family uses what EUROSAM calls PIF-PAF maneuvering, a combination of aerodynamic fins and a lateral thrust system that lets the missile adjust its flight path in the terminal phase. When the geometry between the interceptor and a maneuvering target gets complicated very fast. Basically, PIF-PAF is the Black Knight.
None shall pass. What? None shall pass.
That terminal agility is what makes the Aster relevant against modern ballistic threats, which are not politely following the engagement envelope shown in manufacturer animations. Ukraine is where manufacturer animations go to find out how they'll actually perform. Now, Europe has a Patriot problem, and it's not about the system. Here is the part, though, that rarely makes headlines, because it requires admitting something uncomfortable. Patriot is excellent. Nobody seriously disputes that. It has a proven combat record against ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, the longest development pedigree in Western air defense, and a global logistics and training infrastructure that no other Western system can match. The problem is availability. Switzerland is facing Patriot delivery delays of 4 to 5 years. The Netherlands rushed an order specifically to avoid losing its production slot, a delay that could have pushed delivery back to 2033. These aren't edge cases. They reflect a production system that was sized for a post-Cold War world where nobody actually expected to need this stuff at scale, on a timeline measured in years rather than decades. Denmark looked at that queue, looked at the Baltic, looked at what Russia's been doing since February 2022, and decided not to wait. It selected SAMP-TNG in September of 2025. first deliveries to begin in 2028. Now, Denmark becomes the third customer after France and Italy, and notably, the first to make the choice explicitly in the context of lessons from Ukraine. Patriot is still the big dog in Western air defense, but Europe has discovered a small administrative problem. You can't defend your cities with systems that exist mostly in delivery schedules written by a sadist. Now, I want to pause here because this is a topic where my Air Force background actually changes how I read the procurement story. Air defense isn't glamorous in the way that a fifth-generation stealth fighter is glamorous. There are no afterburners, there are no film franchises, there are only radar operators watching returns at 2 in the morning, maintenance crews keeping the fire control systems aligned in the rain, and supply chains that have to deliver the right interceptor to the right battery before the warning time runs out. What Ukraine has demonstrated is the unsexy part, the logistics, the interceptor stockpiles, the integration between different systems, all talking to each other. That is exactly where modern air campaigns try to find the seams. Russia doesn't need every missile to get through, it just needs enough to get through after the ready rounds are gone. Now, that context is important for everything that comes next. Now, France and Italy delivered the original SAMP-T to Ukraine in 2023. It has been part of Ukraine's high-end air defense network since then. Ukraine doesn't publicize which system kills which missile, sensible operational security, but the system has been active. Now, President Zelensky has stated that Ukraine expects to receive a SAMP-T NG system and begin testing it against ballistic missiles. That claim is direct. It comes from the president, and the strategic logic is completely coherent. What we don't know, well, exact delivery timelines. We don't know which specific ballistic threat profiles the testing will prioritize. We don't know whether the results will be shared with other SAMP-T NG customers in any structured way, or whether Denmark's procurement office will simply watch open source reporting like everyone else. What we can say is that if Ukraine tests SAMP-T NG against live Russian ballistic missiles before 2028, Denmark will receive its first system, having already had access to the most comprehensive performance data any air defense system has ever generated outside of a full-scale war. That's not nothing. So why does this matter for Denmark specifically? Well, Denmark is not buying the SAMP-T NG because it wants a French-Italian trophy for the cabinet. Denmark sits on the approaches to the Baltic Sea. It has critical ports, airfields, energy infrastructure, and a direct role in reinforcing NATO's northern flank, which is no longer an abstract planning concept. It's a live operational requirement. Kaliningrad is a missile garrison Russia's western military district has been quietly rebuilding. The threat arc from Russian territory to Danish infrastructure is not long. Denmark doesn't have Ukraine's geography, but it has Ukraine's lesson plan. Ports matter, airfields matter, energy infrastructure matters, and if Russia decides to turn missiles into diplomacy, your response can't be a strongly worded letter in a meeting scheduled for next Thursday. Historically, a country buying a new air defense system got manufacturer briefings, NATO interoperability exercises, and eventually some live-fire testing at a range where the targets cooperate. What Denmark is getting, involuntarily, at Ukraine's enormous expense, is something no procurement office has ever had access to before. A continuous, real-world, high-intensity, operational data set generated by the exact system family it just purchased, against the exact threat profile it's designed to defeat, operated by crews under actual combat pressure. That is a graduate-level program taught by the hardest possible instructor. And MBDA is already responding to what that program is producing. The company announced plans to double Aster missile production in 2026, driven by surging demand. That decision didn't come from a simulation. It came from watching Ukraine burn through interceptors at a rate that peacetime procurement models never anticipated. The loop from Ukrainian battlefield to European production line to Danish battery is real, and it's moving faster than any previous European defense procurement cycle in living memory. Still, SAMP-T NG does not yet match Patriot's proven combat record or its maximum engagement range against ballistic threats. The Aster 30 B1NT's performance against fast ballistic missiles remains, for now, partly a function of test range data and engineering projections. Ukraine will help close that gap, but until it does, the honest framing is this. Patriot is the veteran sergeant who has actually been shot at. SAMP-T NG is the officer candidate with very good scores and a chance to prove itself. There is also the production question. Doubling Astra output by 2026 is an intention. Interceptor stockpile adequacy is a function of actual production rates, material supply chains, and workforce capacity, all of which European defense industry is still scaling from a very low baseline. Denmark's SAMP NG purchase is a procurement story on paper, but in reality, it's a warning flare. Ukraine has shown Europe what modern missile warfare looks like when theory meets impact at several thousand feet per second. Cities need protection, power grids need protection, and the old assumption that Europe could field a modest number of exquisite systems and call it deterrence has aged about as well as a Russian logistics column outside Kyiv. Denmark won't receive its first SAMP NG until 2028. Ukraine's going to be testing that next-generation system under combat conditions this year. So by the time the Danish operators stand up in front of their Ground Fire 300 radar for the first time, Ukrainian crews will have already written the field manual in real engagements against real missiles at real cost. Europe is building the shield. Ukraine is proving whether it holds, and if it does, the continent gets something it badly needs, a genuine alternative to Patriot, built in Europe, tested against Russian missiles, and produced by an industry that finally remembered air defense isn't optional. It's the roof over the whole damn house. All right, that's the breakdown. If you want to support this kind of analysis, membership is about $3 a month. No algorithm games. I'm never going to try to sell you courses or anything like that. Just back in the work directly. Not ready for that? No problem, just hit subscribe so you can catch the next one as this story unfolds. And if you want the longer reads, the deeper analysis that doesn't fit into a little YouTube window, I'm on Substack. QR code is up on the screen now, or just go to wesodonnell.com. That'll take you right to my Substack. I appreciate you being here, and as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.